Okay, let's unpack this incredible moment in American history. We are jumping straight into the early 1930s.
Right.
So the United States is deep in the Great Depression. I mean, just imagine a country that is really, really struggling. Money was tight, work was scarce.
And people just desperately needed something that felt like pure joy.
Exactly, an escape.
And that emotional need is, I mean, it's the critical context here. What came out of that wasn't just another style of music. It was like a rhythmic antidote to all that despair.
And that's the swing era.
That's the swing era. It's a specific kind of jazz, and it's defined not just by notes, but by the feeling this strong, bouncy, rhythmic drive.
The lift.
Yeah, that lift, that constant forward motion. That's what people meant when they said the music swings.
So it's more than just being fast. It feels like the music is actually pushing you forward. And the main way people heard this wasn't, a small jazz combo in a little club.
No, not at all. It was the big band, this huge, organized musical machine. They were the powerhouses of pop music back then, all through the 1930s and into the early 40s.
Okay, so when we say big band, how big are we actually talking? Why did they need so many people on one stage?
Well, you were typically looking at 15 to maybe 20 musicians all playing together.
Wow.
And that sounds huge today, but you have to remember the acoustics back then. Before we had powerful modern speakers in every venue, you needed that sheer volume of instruments just to fill these giant dance halls.
Some of which could hold thousands of people, right?
Thousands. So to manage 20 players and keep that sound tight, they had to be incredibly organized.
So how did they do it? How do you structure a group that big?
They were structured very carefully into 3 distinct sections, and each one had a specific job to do. First, you get the bright, loud sound of the brass section.
Okay, so that's your trumpets and your trombones.
Exactly. They're often playing those sharp, tension-grabbing melodies.
Yeah.
Then, for contrast, you had the woodwind section.
Which gives you a much smoother texture, and that was mostly saxophones.
Right. Alto, tenor, baritone saxes. But what's really fascinating about these players is a thing called doubling.
Doubling?
Yeah. So a musician might be playing their saxophone, and then in the middle of a song, just seamlessly switch over to a clarinet.
Oh, to get a different sound.
A totally different color, a different texture, all without having to hire another person. It made the band incredibly versatile.
And that brings us to the engine room, the section that decided if the music actually swung or not, the rhythm section.
This was the absolute heartbeat. I mean, it was everything. If these 4 instruments, piano, double bass, drums, and maybe a guitar, if they lost their energy, the whole thing would just fall apart.
So the drummer's job is obvious, setting the pace, keeping that steady 4-beat pulse for the dancers. But what about that constant low thumping sound that grounds everything?
That would be the double bass, that giant 6-foot-tall wooden instrument. The bassist would pluck the strings and play what we call a walking bass line.
A walking bass line. Okay, for someone who hasn't heard that term, what does that actually mean?
It's brilliantly simple. It means the player hits a note on every single beat. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Like someone literally walking. Step, 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 step.
Exactly. A confident, rhythmic walk. And that provides this deep, constant, forward-moving foundation that makes you have to dance. It just pulls you along.
So the bass is walking, and then the rhythm guitarist is adding these short, choppy chords on every beat, almost like another drum.
Yes. And the piano is filling in the harmony, adding little melodic ideas. Now, speaking of textures, the brass section couldn't just be loud all the time, right?
Right. You need some contrast.
So to create that contrast, to have a sort of conversation with the rest of the band, they used a very important tool.
And that's the mute, right?
That's the mute. It's a device, usually made of metal or cardboard, that a brass player sticks right into the bell of their trumpet or trombone.
And it doesn't just make it quieter.
No, that's the key. It totally changes the tone. It can make it buzzy or kind of nasal or really distorted. It added so much dramatic color to the music.
So you have these massive organized bands playing these detailed charts, but we still call it jazz, and jazz means improvisation. How did they mix that structure with that freedom?
That's the magic of it. Big bands relied, heavily on written arrangements. These were complicated charts telling all 18 musicians exactly what to play.
But they always left room for improvisation.
Always. That's where the surprise and the individual skill came in. They would carve out these short sections for solos where one musician would just invent a brand new melody on the spot.
And that took incredible skill.
Oh, world-class skill. You think of someone like tenor saxophonist Coleman Hawkins or the master himself, trumpeter Louis Armstrong. They showed how a single player could just seize the spotlight for 30 seconds, totally command the stage, and then melt right back into the group.
Okay, let's break down some of the vocabulary here so we really get the sound. Let's start with the most basic building block. The riff. What is that?
A riff is just a short, catchy musical phrase. Just a few notes. But it gets repeated over and over and over again.
So it becomes a theme.
Exactly. It drives the excitement. Now, if the walking bass is hitting every beat nice and steady, the real magic is in the syncopation.
Can you define that simply?
Syncopation is all about rhythmic surprise. So instead of playing a note squarely on the main beat, you play it slightly off the beat.
So it pushes and pulls against the rhythm.
Yes. It creates this tension and release that gives the music that energetic snap. Makes it way more fun to dance to.
And what about that shaky, expressive sound you hear when a great horn player holds a long note?
That's vibrato. They're just vibrating the pitch very slightly to add warmth and emotion. It gives the note a real personality.
No, sometimes bands knew a song so well they didn't even need sheet music.
Right. Those were called head arrangements because the whole chart was just in their heads. They had it memorized.
And we can't forget scat singing.
Ah, yeah. That's when a singer uses nonsense syllables like doo-wah-bop to improvise a melody, basically turning their voice into another instrument in the band. It's just pure, spontaneous creativity.
And all this complexity and innovation, it all served one primary purpose.
Dancing.
It was all for dancing. This was music engineered for moving.
It was not background music. It was a cultural force built around the dance floor. And the most famous dance to come out of this whole era was the Lindy Hop.
Which started in the African-American community in Harlem, New York.
Exactly. And the Lindy Hop was revolutionary. I mean, it had incredibly fast footwork and eventually these wild acrobatic moves.
You're talking about flips, tosses, midair tricks.
Literally swinging your partner. They also danced the jitterbug and the Charleston, and they packed into these huge ballrooms. For young people, this was their main social outlet.
And the absolute center of this universe was the Savoy Ballroom in Harlem. It was nicknamed the home of happy feet. What made the Savoy so important?
Well, in an era that was defined by just painful segregation, the Savoy was famous for being an integrated space.
It's huge.
It was monumental. People of all different racial and economic backgrounds came together there just to share their love for the music and the dance. It was a true oasis.
And the place itself was designed for nonstop energy, right? It had 2 bandstands.
It did. So the moment one band finished their set, the second band would immediately kick in on the other side of the hall. The music literally never stopped.
Which led to the legendary battles of the bands.
Oh, yeah. To see who can make the crowd dance harder and longer.
And those battles, plus the radio broadcasts, they created the first real music superstars. Let's talk about the Bandleaders who became household names. You have to start with the king of swing.
That's Benny Goodman. Goodman was crucial because he broke racial barriers. He hired incredible black musicians like Lionel Hampton and Teddy Wilson to play in his bands. He brought swing music to a massive mainstream white audience.
Then you had the composer of the era, Duke Ellington. What was his contribution?
Ellington was a flat-out genius. He didn't just write songs. He wrote complex musical portraits. He wrote parts specifically for the unique sounds of the individual musicians in his own orchestra.
So he was writing for a specific person's style.
Yes, his music was compositionally brilliant. Then you have Count Basie, who had a more relaxed style.
Right, Basie was all about the rhythm. His band had this bluesy, kind of sparse style. He used a lot of simple, repeated riffs and just let the walking bass and the drums drive everything. He put the rhythm section right out front.
He really did. And finally, you have someone like Glenn Miller, who led a very disciplined band and produced some of the most recognizable melodies of the whole era.
Songs like In the Mood.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these leaders, they were running huge operations, hiring musicians, choosing songs, and traveling thousands of miles on buses to perform all over the country.
So how did that sound get from a ballroom in New York to a teenager living in the middle of nowhere?
Technology.
Yeah.
Technology played a massive role.
It was all about the radio.
Radio broadcasts were everything. They took those live performances and beamed them directly into people's living rooms for free. You could create a national hit overnight.
And if you missed the broadcast, you bought the record, the 78 RPM record.
Millions of them. And access was everywhere because of the jukebox. You could be in a small diner, pay a nickel, and suddenly the biggest hit in the country was playing right there.
And this is where it gets really interesting for you, because this is basically where the modern music industry began.
It is. The media started tracking national music charts based on record sales and radio plays. And that's what really established the teenager as a specific consumer group. People like you were a market to be sold to.
The business model that governs streaming and concerts today was really being built back in the 1930s.
Absolutely. But, no era lasts forever.
Right.
By the late 1940s, the swing sound just began to fade.
What killed the big band era?
There's a few big things all at once. First, World War II. Travel became really hard because of gas rationing, and a ton of the best musicians were drafted.
The bands were literally dismantled.
They were. And economically, the government put a new tax on dance halls, which made it way too expensive to host a 15-piece band. It was just cheaper to hire a small group.
There was also a musician strike.
A huge one. It stopped new records from being made for a long time, so the flow of new hits just stopped.
And at the same time, tastes were just changing. A new style of jazz called bebop was coming up.
And bebop was technically amazing, fast, complex, but it was really meant for listening, not for dancing. It was art music, less accessible for the average person on the dance floor.
And finally, the focus shifted away from the band and onto the singer.
The rise of the solo vocalist. People like Frank Sinatra, who actually started out singing with big bands, they stepped out on their own and became huge individual stars.
So by 1950, most of those giant bands were just gone.
They'd broken up or shrunk down. The world that supported them had changed.
But the legacy is permanent. I mean, the era ended, but it laid the foundation for almost all the popular music that came after it.
Without a doubt. The arranging techniques from people like Duke Ellington are still taught in music schools. And if you listen to early rock and roll or rhythm and blues, you can hear that 4-beat swing rhythm baked right into its DNA. It influenced everything.
The swing era was really this powerful moment where technology and culture and this incredible, energetic music came together and just redefined everything. It gave people joy during the absolute toughest of times.
And that's a powerful reminder of what music can do.
Good luck with your studies, and remember, the next time you hear a driving rhythm that makes you want to move, you're hearing the direct legacy of that constant, confident walking bass line.